All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Saturday, September 6th of 2025. Looking ahead here, there is college football action underway already today. Good luck to all of you playing college football. MMA started as well. And then we obviously have week 1 NFL tomorrow. So going to be talking plenty of football today, along with a host of other sports happening this weekend as well. No better time to check out SaberSim. We have a 7-day trial for $7 of our starter subscription. So you can always check us out at sabersim.com. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. Get your questions in one of 3 ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim teams. Can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show here on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So you can tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me on a Saturday morning or afternoon, depending on where you live here. So let's get SaberSim pulled up. We do have a number of questions to get to, so we'll just work through them one at a time here. A couple of things. One is we just, or last night technically, opened up the Max Challenge. So it should pop up when you open up one of the NFL main slates. Okay. So if you open up the NFL main slate, you should see an icon in the bottom right corner telling you to opt in for the Max Challenge. Okay. So all you need to do is, if we know your DK username, we will check this first box for you. If we don't know it, we will ask you to input it and just say, hey, what is your DK username? And then you just click this opt-in for the Max Challenge. And that's all you need to do for now. So aside from that, it says we saved your spot in the Max Challenge. To get your free shirt, you just need to max out the mini max for Sunday. And then, so the last option is basically just playing the mini max. Like if you click this, it'll say click here to open the mini max contest on DK and reserve or enter 150 entries. And then you just come back to SaberSim, upload your entry file, and then, obviously play the contest. So that is it. We will reach out at a later time for, information to get you guys your swag and all that kind of stuff. So that is really it. And it should be fairly simple. Once you do enter it, you should see a, banner or something, whatever you want to call this, up at the top where you can click it and just see where you're at. So that is the last thing there. And then we do have our Max Challenge page where you can go and see details on the Max Challenge, prizes, how to enter, all that kind of good stuff. So giving away 2 tickets to the big game like we did last year. I remember seeing a picture of the persons who attended the game and looked like they had a good time, all things considered. So really fun. Happy to be running it back here. So just as long as you are, playing the slate, looking at the slate, you should see the Max Challenge available to enter. All right. Good stuff there. Just wanted to touch on the Max Challenge really quickly. We're just going to work top down in the Discord. Have plenty of questions for today. So first question, is there a way to get rid of the scores and keep the expected runs on the contest page? It's useful to have what the expected runs were doing for lineup, or what the expected runs were when doing lineup review the following day. Okay, so this is a question about baseball, just so we're clear, guys. So let's say we go back to yesterday's MLB main slate. Okay, so now we have all of the actual scores of the game. Looks like some of these are a little off because I'm pretty sure Houston, Texas didn't end in a tie, but maybe there's something with extra innings here not working properly. Either way, let's say I want to see what the pre-slate scores were. Just click on the game card And then it's like Boston goes back, all these go back to how they were previously. So you can just swap back and forth by clicking on them. I know someone responded in the Discord. Appreciate that, but did want to cover that for others who might have the same question as well. All right. Snowman said, good morning. What's going on? All right, next question. Are you going to bring back the Build Review show where you analyze our past slates and show us how to improve? So we're not going to have a dedicated show for this, but if you ever do want a review, feel like you have questions and you're having trouble kind of figuring them out yourself, easiest thing to do, just either send us an email, support@sabersim.com, or click the question mark, write us a message. All you need to do to write it is, or to request one, just like, hey, can you guys do a build review for me for this date, this sport, this slate? So I would say something like the Friday, September 5th, DraftKings MLB main slate, and then boom, we would know exactly what to review and kind of go from there. Someone said, I enjoy the new way to enter lineups. Good. We're glad to hear that. That is was our goal, to make it simpler and easier to do so. So I'm glad that's helping. All right, next question. Could you do a step-by-step through how to fill using multiple builds? Build for big tournament, then second build for smaller tournament. Yeah, for sure. So let me just go and drop some entries in for two different upcoming slates. So let's go to, say, NFL. And let's go to the main slate. Okay. And then let's say one entry and another one. Okay, so I just loaded up this entry file. Let's get rid of these blank ones. So I have two contests here, right? I have a quarter jukebox where I'm doing one entry, and then a dime time where I'm doing 3 entries, right? Just for example. So let's say I wanted to do separate builds here, okay? Now, what I would probably do is unstar all of these. And then I would just open up a new build. And let's get rid of all these old builds because we're not going to need them. It's going to get in our way. Delete. Delete. And then this one we don't need. All right, cool. So like fresh start from scratch. Okay, so notice nothing created, right? That's because I turned this off. So then in one build, I would do that, add a contest, and then let's say I do the quarter. Okay, boom. So there's one there. All right, then I'm going to open up a new build, and then maybe I just rename it. And I'll just put 25 cent. Maybe I rename this one for 10 cent. I go to add lineup group. Okay, I'm going to do the second contest, which is going to be the dime. All right, cool. So in one, I have 25 cent. One, I have the 10 cent. All right, just using the manual groups and then just assigning the lineups to the contest. Okay, so now I'm going to build some lineups for each. And, some people might think like, well, what's like the positive or negative of doing this? Sometimes people like different rules or different player pools or, different minimax salaries, filters. Like there's a number of different reasons, different minimax exposures. It just depends how much you want to customize your lineups on like a per contest basis here. So that would be a reason for doing it this way. But generally, most people are like leaving them all within one build, which is like totally okay. All right. So we're going to let this build. Okay, lineups are going to finish. So the contest sim is going to kick off. We're just going to let that run behind the scenes while we jump over to the quarter. And then in this one, we will adjust projections, change to 500 lineups, and we're going to build. Okay, so then while this one runs, we can jump back to the 10 cent. Sim should have run by now. If it didn't, we can just kick it off. Okay, sim finished. Now it's diversifying. All right, so 3 lineups are in for the dime here. We can see our exposures. Let's say we're just happy with it the way it is. Okay, great. Save all button is yellow. Okay, this just indicates that within this build, we are not putting lineups into all of our contests, which we are doing on purpose in this case. And then if you just hover, it'll say, hey, some of your contests are not assigned to groups and will not receive lineups. And then it indicates which contest it is, which is the quarter, which we know is okay. So I'm going to save this. It's going to tell me again. I'm going to say, yes, it's okay. It's going to put the 3 lineups into the dime. And then we go over to the quarter. Okay. Run the sim over here. All right, sim finished. Diversifier's running. Okay. Diversifier ran. We got our 1 lineup. Let's say we're happy with it. We're going to click save. And it's going to say, hey, you're not feeling the dime, which we're okay with. Okay, cool. So this one saves that. Now we can download these. And then if we want to just open it and look at it real quick. Now there are lineups in the quarter, and then there are lineups in the dime. So that is how you use different builds to fill all of your contests in the new setup. All right. Keeping it rolling. Next question. What should I be doing more to lower my dupes in Showdown? My average last night was 91 in the 50 cent. Good question. That does feel like kind of high. So you have, in my opinion, there's basically 3 ways to lower your duplication rate. Now, let's say like we're going to go to tomorrow, right? Okay, I'm going to pull up this Vegas, New England one of the morning showdowns. Okay, so the first way, we're going to go over all three. The first way I think to do this is to lower your max salary, right? Maybe instead of playing a 50K max, you play like a 49.5 max. Maybe you play 49.6, 49.7. You kind of got to play around with it. I do think this is actually a good point to make. There is a lot of opportunity to trial and error across all of the different showdowns on a Sunday. There's basically a showdown for every single game, and you can play them all and try different things, right? Maybe you have like 3 different strategies you want to try. Okay, try one of them on 3, try the other strategy on the next 3, other strategy on the next 3, kind of, and just like divvy it out, right? So like, let's say on this one, I want to try a max salary adjustment of 49.5. Maybe on the other one, I want to try a max salary of 49.8. Maybe on the other one, I want to leave it at the 50K mark and just see, how the different dupes come in with this one adjustment, right? That is something that you can consider. And so salary adjustments, lowering it and not using the max is one way of doing it, a simple way. I've seen users do this and, not really much else, and like actually do have decent duplication levels. So that's one consideration. The other consideration would be to kind of take into account lineup construction. Okay. So like, let's say that, I'm going to switch over to optimizer mode. And let's say I just want to build the top 20 lineups based on projection. Okay. So make 2 small adjustments. And I'm just telling the builder, hey, run me the cash lineups, the top 20 cash lineups for this slate. Now, what I'm trying to do is just get a sense of like, what are the most common constructions to look out for? Okay, so we don't need portfolio. Adjustments. Oh, I put 500 max salary, not 50,000. My bad. Definitely my fault. Okay, we do not need the sim, and we're going to switch from portfolio to uniques and then just look projected score. All right. Turn compact off. Okay, so what I'm kind of looking for here, and I would probably just actually look at all 20 lineups. So I'd change my lineups to 20. That I can see the different exposures and stuff. So Drake May in the captain, very, very popular. So what I'm trying to do here is like get a sense for like what type of lineups people are going to play. From what I can tell, it's some combination of like Drake May captain and then like Bowers, Gino, Jacoby kind of flexes, and like we look at these, right? Okay, May captain with 1 player on his team, and then we see 4 Raiders. Okay, so it's like kind of 4-2, 4-2, 5-1, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2. So it seems like Raiders 4-2s are super popular, right? So what I want to do with that information, right? Well, if a lot of people are going to be playing Raider 4-2s, I can just simply try and like avoid those. And it is going to depend how aggressive you want to be, but you could be extremely aggressive, right? You could say something that's like create a rule, say use no more than 3, and you would change positions to any. This means captain or flex. And then I could say group by team. And then I could say use no more than 3. I could save this as a manual rule. And then I could turn this off. Well, the only thing is that, so what I'm doing here, right, is I'm saying use Vegas 3 or less. So I'm kind of favoring New England lineups. I'm saying, okay, either do 3 3s, do 4 2s in favor of New England, or do 5 1s in favor of New England, right? So this would be like one way where I'm using lineup construction and what the kind of cash lineups are telling me to be different, right? It's not that I'm worried about salary. I'm using a max. It's not that I'm worried about ownership. I'm simply trying to just construct lineups differently than what I think are going to be some of the most common constructions, right? And then, you could go further with this. Sometimes you're going to see situations where it's like you're paying up at captain, and there's like a very obvious kind of pay down that people are like pairing together. So like I saw this. Usually you see this a little bit more in like basketball. I saw this in like the playoffs, maybe 2 seasons ago now, where it was like Jokic captain with like a super cheap bench player on his team was like very, very common. Like everybody wanted to pay up for Jokic captain because he was so well projected. But then if you're going to spend, 20 plus salary on Jokic, you need salary relief somewhere. And there was just like a very obvious, like kind of pay down. And so what I would do, right, is like just like limit those number of combinations. You know what I mean? So you could do that with like filters. You could say, okay, show me, like, let's get back to this football one. Like, hey, show me my Drake Mays. And I filter for him. So now I'm looking at my exposures of only the lineups with this player. And it's like, who are we using? Okay, if we're using May in the captain, we're using a ton of Bowers in the flex. And we're also using a lot of Geno and Jacoby, right? So going back to like, this is kind of like a little bit harder problem because there's like 3 players. But like if this was the Jokic, I think it was Zeke Najee, maybe, okay, I only let so much percent of my lineups have both those players. So like if I had, if I'm filtered for Jokic, maybe I have 50% of my lineups with Najee. Maybe I drop it down to 25, right? And the way you would do that is not with the minimax exposures. You would do that by trashing the lineups. So like what I would do is scroll down to the last lineup because I want to get rid of the lower graded ones, right? Not the higher graded ones. And then I would just start trashing these. And then I could see how the exposures change. And then I would keep doing it until I got to a level where I'm like, okay, I actually kind of like this, right? So there are lineup construction considerations here with showdowns. That is number 2 option to lower duplication, is kind of like the more game theory kind of way. The third option is with ownership filters. So you could use some ownership filters. That is one way to do it, where you would just, always recommend filtering the pool. So like, let's go to a build that's not like a cash build. Okay. So let's do 500 lineups this time. All right. So while this runs, so there's basically 2 ways to use the ownership filters there, or 2 types of ownership filters. There's the sum ownership filters and the product / geomean ownership filters. We break down the differences between those 2 and how they interact in our help docs in this video called How Do Ownership Product and Ownership Geometric Mean Work. It's a very good video. I'd recommend checking it out if you want to learn more about that. As far as applying the filters, so there's also 2 ways of doing this. You can do this as a rule. If you go to add new rule, you can use aggregate rules where you could say, hey, my own sum no more than X. My own geomean no more than X, right? This is one way to do it. Pre-build, I've talked to people who like doing it pre-build. I've talked to people who like doing it post-build. There's a couple different options. So let's say I do post build, right? Okay, 500 lineups. I generally recommend to people filtering out somewhere between like 10 to 20% of your lineups. Just trying to like cut out some of the absolute like highest owned. So we'll just say some own. Okay, I would come into this. I would say show lineups with ownership less than X, right? And maybe I just make up a number, say 200. The number is not so important. You just want to set a number and then see what impact it has on your pool. So like here, right, if I close my lineup group, okay, 200 sent 68 lineups to the trash. That's actually kind of a good number, right? Because 10% would be 50 and 20% would be 100. So I'm right in the middle. 68 is like pretty close there to the middle. So I would be happy with that impact. So some ownership is one way you could do it. GeoMean is a little bit more accurate in projecting dupes. Now, in order to use GeoMean, you need to create a custom metric for it, which is covered in that tutorial that I pointed out. So I already have the custom metric, and then I kind of already have a filter set up. So it would be my custom metric less than X, right? And let's say I just set it to, 22. And I would just do the same thing, right? I would set a number, and then I would come in here, and then I would filter, and then I would just see the impact that it has, and then kind of go from there. Now, one thing, it looks like this got turned off. Let's turn it back on. Okay, so let's put like a lot of lineups in the trash, right? 300. So then I would just basically tinker with it, right? And then I would raise it to allow more lineups in, right? Okay, 25, 144, and kind of try and settle on a number. I'm sure 27 is good, right? 27 is like 10%, just kind of mess around with it, figure it out. But this is a better way than some ownership to account for duplication. And that's all kind of covered in that breakdown of what it is. So those are like the big three ways that I would be thinking or considering using to lower duplication across showdowns. Now, you could use more than one option. You could only use one option, right? So you can combine them and, do different things. So kind of got to play around with it, but I am a huge, huge proponent of playing all of the showdowns. If you have the time and you really want to like grind out football, it'll allow you to, okay, I use only salary. I use only lineup construction. I use only GeoMean. Okay, maybe I use 2 in this one. Maybe I use different combination of 2, different combination of 2. Maybe I use all 3. Maybe I use a different max salary in this one, a different max salary in that one, right? And then, the next day, right, Monday, Tuesday, you can go into flashback and then you can go and look like, hey, how did I grade out with this type? How did I grade out with that type? Like that really gets into like the nitty gritty of like really grinding out NFL season. But it is kind of cool if that is something you want to do. All right. Good question there. Good question. Next question. Is it still best to do a full late swap plus sim before the afternoon slate, or is quick swap good enough? Good question. So quick swap, in my opinion, is a great idea if there are players who were expected to be in and they are out, right? So like we've seen this a couple times the last, I think week 1, we're going to see this like probably more just because we don't really understand all the ins and outs of the teams. Like I think a lot of people expected Jaden Blue to be active on Thursday for Dallas, and then he was inactive. People might have expected Elijah Mitchell to be active for the Chiefs yesterday, and then he was inactive, right? So I think there are going to be some situations where guys end up being inactive that we might have otherwise expected to play. So those players might need to be swapped out of your lineups, right? I think quick swap is the best tool for getting out players out of your lineups and getting new players into your lineups. Okay. Late swap, in my opinion, is the best tool for re-optimizing your lineups to account for how games have played to that point in the slate, right? Because you're going to have access to the live projections and the live actuals. And we do want to re-optimize your lineups to help your good lineups get higher in the standings and then help your bad lineups to win back some min cash equity, right? So I would recommend doing a full late swap and sim before the afternoon slates. If you don't have any players that are out, then I think it's fine to go straight to the late swap. If you do have some players that are out, I would recommend quick swapping first and then doing a late swap. So that would be my recommendations. All right. Keeping it going. This one might have been answered in Discord. I am unable to access the office hours links for 9-3 using this link posted on this channel. Could you please send me the link to the YouTube video for the 9-3 office hours? There is one question I posted in that channel that I'm particularly interested in knowing the answer to. It looks like someone in Discord helped me out here. Appreciate it. But just so you guys are aware, in Discord, we do have a YouTube channel, and all of the office hours recordings are in here. So you could just, they're on YouTube as well, but this will just take you straight to it. So I would just go find the 9-3 one, open it up. And then when you open these up, let me see how this works. Open. Once our team has processed these, just so you guys are aware, in the descriptions, you can open them up. And then, if you ask a specific question and you want to just find it, just go in here and like, hey, maybe this was your question at the 27 mark. Okay, you click this. It's going to take you to that exact point in the video, so you can get quick answers to the questions that you asked. So that is the best way to do that. But appreciate somebody helping me get this user a quicker response in the Discord. Always helpful. All right. Alabama said, is there a way to have the flex spot only pick from late start games? Okay, so let's go over to the main slate. All right, so first off, I do want to say the builder is going to automatically put players from the late slate, from the afternoon games into the flex in the event that there are players used from the afternoon. So like what I mean is, let's say you have 3 running backs in this lineup and all three of them are in the morning. Okay, well then the flex is also going to be the morning running back. But let's say I have 3 running backs, 2 are from the morning and 1 is from the afternoon. Then what it's going to do is make sure that the afternoon running back goes into the flex. So it will consider the time of the games in the event that there are players who have different splits. I want to see if I can find an example of this. So like this lineup, all 3 there's 4 wide receivers. Falcons, early, Arizona, early. Okay, this lineup is actually a good example of this. Oh, where did my lineup go? Let's go back to one. I guess this lineup is an example of it as well, but this one works. All right, so Drake London, right? Game starts at 10 Pacific time. Marvin Harrison, 10 Pacific time. Colts, 10 Pacific time. Nico Collins, 4th wide receiver. He's in Houston, and they play at 1:25. So that is the late start game, and then he gets designated to the flex. So it does it automatically. Alabama said, cool, didn't notice that. Yeah. There are times where people might actually want to force a flex player into the afternoon, where some people having, they call it a late night hammer or a late game hammer, where They're always basically have like a player left before the last games or something like that. So like, let's say you wanted to force a player into the flex from the afternoon, right? Okay. You can actually do that. What I would do is, let's just say I'm going to open a new build. Okay. Close this. So what I would do is I would go to flex. This is like a similar question. This is going to be a similar way to answer the question of like, how do I not play tight end in the flex? Okay. So it's just all about kind of controlling the players in the flex. So what I would do is I would go to the flex column or like section. I would right click on team. I would select all, and then I would uncheck the afternoon games. So let's say I'm going to go uncheck San Francisco. I'm going to uncheck Seattle. I'm going to uncheck Tennessee. And then I'm going to scroll up. I got to uncheck Denver. I got to uncheck Houston. I got to uncheck Detroit. And then I got to uncheck the Rams. Okay, so what I've done here after I do the Rams is I've excluded these teams from view, and I'll show you why. Because I'm going to use the mass uncheck button to remove all of these other players from the flex. And then I'm going to reselect all to put all the teams back. So now my flex spot can only be players from the afternoon game. So this would guarantee that I have at least one afternoon game player in every lineup, and they would be coming, they're the only players checked. So they're the only players available to be put into this position. So that is how you do that. It's basically like the same. If you want to remove tight end from the flex, you do that in the position. So I would just select running backs and wide receivers, leaving tight end unchecked, turn off all the wide receivers and running backs. Oh, wait, I did this backwards. My bad. The way I did that is I only included tight end, but it would be the opposite. It would just be the opposite. So you would uncheck wide receiver, running back. I would turn off all the tight ends. And then I would reselect all. Now I only have wide receivers and running backs. So there's a lot you can do with like filtering the table. So there's a lot of optionality there, but that's effectively, it should be similar to it just depends how you want to chop it up. Okay. Looks like Tim responded, and we did touch on this at the beginning of the show, but more people have tuned in. So I do want to mention it again about halfway through here. All right, forgot. Is there a mini max challenge this season? Yes. If you go to a NFL main slate for any site, first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have like a pop-up in the bottom right corner. Mine actually came up here because I already demoed this. But once you do these two things, you opt into the max challenge. If we know your DK username from previous contests, then we will just auto check this for you. If we don't, we will ask you to input it. So once we get your DK username, then you just opt in, and then it just tells you last thing. You just got to max out the 150, the mini max, and then from there it'll just pop up here to the top of the screen, and then you can click on it at any time. But that is all you need to do for now. We will reach out at a later date to get any more information we need as far as like shipping addresses, and that way we could send you guys your shirts and swag that you guys earn throughout the year. But if you want to learn more about the max challenge, you can click this learn more here. It'll take you to our max challenge page for this season, and you could just see more into like the prizes and what we're offering and things like that. But yes, max challenge is back, and you can access it by opening up a main slate for NFL. All right. Jimmy said, okay, actually, hold on. Let's answer this one really quick. Can I get in that if I'm using SaberSim through RunPure? I am almost positive the answer is yes, as long as you are using the SaberSim logo. So let's go back here. So as long as you're using the logo, I'm like almost positive the answer is yes. No. Because I'm pretty sure that counts as an active SaberSim subscription, but I'd have to check. But it's basically just these 4 steps. So if you're using Saber through RentPure and you have the logo, which we're like checking for, that would work. All right. Jimmy said, when making changes to exposures post-build, how do you apply the changes? For example, I increased my CMC exposure post-build, but I can't seem to find that tab to confirm or apply changes I made. Okay, so you have to open the lineups tab, and then let's see. Let's go to a build. I built lineups. Okay, so let's say I'm here, right? If I go to McCaffrey, he's in one lineup. What if I want him in all my lineups, right? Okay, I send him to 100% minimum exposure. If this lineups tab isn't open, you won't see the apply button. You could also turn on in the settings in the lineups, auto apply exposures, so you don't have to click apply. So one of these 2 options would be how you would do it. I think if you're on mobile, there's like a projection section and then there's like a lineup section. You would set it in projections. You would hop over to lineups, which is the equivalent of like having this open, and then apply it on the lineup section. So this apply button lives over here. You could turn on auto apply and not have to deal with it. So those are your 2 options there. And then we just click apply. And boom, now we have 100% CMC. All right, Eagle Eye, just tuning in. I know this is a basic question, but can you show how to have different groups for cash and GPP lineups? Yeah, absolutely. So the big difference is going to be the requirements for your templates, right? Like let's say you want to put all of your cash lineups into one contest. Okay, so what I would do is create a lineup group for all of my contests. I go to requirements. I would recommend using type is cash. That would be one way of doing it, right? There are going to be times probably where you're going to have some cash contests that SaberSim recognizes as custom because we don't include every contest in the lobby. So what I would probably do is something where you're going to have to hack this like a little bit. So I would go to the contest tab, and let's say you have like some custom contests, right, that are like cash. I would generally recommend changing the entrance to a different value, right? Like let's say that you change it all like to 2, right? Just like for fun. Like you're gonna sort your cash contest by projected score probably anyways. You're not going to use contest sims, so it doesn't matter, right? So okay, I come in, I set them all to 2. I go back to my build. And then I go back to my template that we were just writing. Okay, so I do all type is cash. I would do or entrance equals 2, since we're designating it like that. You could do like or name includes double, right? Maybe you have like some double ups. So like you would basically just want to kind of figure out what are all the similarities between like the cash contest that you're playing, and then put all of those different options into the requirements. That way you could put them all together. And then let's say that, okay, well, for my cash, I want to use projected score by default. Okay, it's change diversity to uniques, change rank by to projected score. Now it's going to put all your cash into one group, your cash contest, and then it's automatically going to rank them by projected score if we cover them all with these requirements, right? And so I think that the cash and the double, could capture a lot. And then you put the entrance to 2 for all of your like custom caches, and that should get the job done. So something like that would probably be what I would do for the cash. And then for the other contest, right? Like we call this cash. What I want to do. So I want to remember some of this, right? You kind of have to write like the opposite. Yeah, this would work for the cash. That's good. But then we got to remember, okay, well, what are we going to do for our GPPs, right? Okay, so I have a cash one. So then like for my GPPs, I was doing like another example for another user, like trying to break out a bunch of stuff, right? So like we did like boosters, satellites, winner take alls, dime times, a bunch of like smaller contests. And then I went and did like the opposite of all of those. So you're going to kind of have to do something like that. So like what I would do is, okay, that covers all of like the cash and stuff. But then I would do another one for like my GPPs, where maybe for my GPPs, I want to do a group for each contest. Well, then I would do type is not cash, and I would do and entrance is greater than 2, and name does not include double, right? So we would want to basically do the opposites to exclude those. That way we don't create 2 groups for one contest, right? Because if we just came in here and we didn't do any requirements and we just said, okay, we'll now create a group for each contest, it's going to also create a group for the ones that we already accounted for, right? So we need to basically exclude those in whatever other template we're setting up for our other contests. So just keep that in mind, right? Like that's why when I was doing this other one for the other user, I basically wrote to exclude all of those other types, and then we captured everything perfectly. So that's something to consider there. Jimmy said, okay, thanks. It was driving me nuts looking for it. Yeah, I could definitely, I could see how that could be confusing, especially on mobile, but I don't know if you're on mobile or not. Eagle Eye said, I do all the double ups, so that should work. That's great. All right. Looks like Tim helped me out over here. That's great. All right, keeping it going. Okay, when lineups are getting sorted after running contest sim, you have the option of uniques 1 through 5 or portfolio for sorting. Could you explain the portfolio sorting method and how it works? It's working, please. I understand what unique sorting option is doing. Just wondering how the other one is working. Is it similar to the old risk-adjusted ROI option? Thanks for the help. Okay, great question. So this is a recent change we made to the app. We do have good videos explaining this. I just want to call them out because they're good resources. So if you go to Saber School, top left, I would go to this updates section. Okay. There's a couple good videos in here. I would definitely watch this one. Saber Sim NFL 25, our new features will change how you play DFS. This is really good. There are a couple more videos. The release note's not so important. I would watch these other two. Okay. Saber Sim 5.0, lineup groups and portfolio diversifier. And then lineup groups and portfolio diversifier, our next major update. Okay. These three videos will be like exactly what you need to kind of understand. These two go into detail about the groups and diversifier. This one is more kind of like an overview of everything that's changed basically since like last NFL season. So I would watch those, but essentially what the videos are going to tell you is that the portfolio diversifier does not only care about the lineup's ROI. And what it cares more about is how the lineups complement each other. Okay. So for instance, right, let's say I go to this time where I had like 3 lineups, right? And we'll let this load. I'm going to undo this CMC exposure that we had. Apply. So we'll let this rerun. Okay, we're actually going to go to compact mode for view, compact view for this. And then I'm going to drag this out. Okay, so I'm going to increase this to 20, just like to make this a little bit more obvious how this is working. So what it's doing right now, it's figuring out which 20 lineups best complement each other when played together. It uses ROI as like its truth source, but it doesn't solely care about the ROI value. Okay. So your top lineup, your number one lineup is always going to be your highest ROI. But after that, the lineups that are used can vary. So like for instance here, right? Our 10th lineup is a 1% ROI lineup. Okay. It's always going to use positive ROI lineups as long as they're available. Notice how our 10th lineup is 1% ROI, but then our 11th lineup is 98% ROI. Well, like, why is that? Well, the builder is basically looking at the other lineups that were used previously and then trying to figure out which lineup available best helps the portfolio do the best over time. And what you will notice is like, if we go to uniques and then we sort by ROI, right? It's going to just give us highest ROI top down. You know, these lineups can be very, very correlated to each other and have like a lot of the same players, where your results can be very, very like tight, right? Your lineups are like all going to be on the left, all in the middle, all on the right, where portfolio is going to help you kind of smooth that out in the absolute smartest way possible. And it'll do that by considering the ROI, but then also considering how the lineups do when played together. So like that's the biggest difference there. Sometimes you'll get, 3 lineups in a row, but like, we're skipping a lot of the 90s and stuff, right? Like that, right? We saw those like 90 percenters. We're jumping to 80. We're jumping to 78 here. So these lineups just do better when played together. But that's effectively what portfolio is doing. Again, check out those other videos to learn more about it and, just hear a different voice kind of speak on it. All right. Next question. We answered this one. All right. Next question. What is the optimal number for getting a sufficient enough player pool, but also maximizing speed for college football showdowns? 5,000 is taking way too long. I've been running into time crunches. Good question. Me personally, and like my experience, I've had a lot better time running like 2,500 lineups. Typically the time it takes to do that tends to be much faster. I think after 2,500, you get into like 3,000, it starts to like kind of crawl. You can also cancel the build at like any time, right? Like you don't have to wait for it to finish. There's always the option when you run a build, and like we'll just rerun this one, to stop the build at any time, right? Even if this is, halfway through, whatever, right? Okay. Hasn't built any lineups yet. Well, wait, usually like after 20%, it'll like start building. So right now it's like pulling all the sims and then playing them out. And then it's gathering up how all the players did. And it's starting to like analyze them. And then it'll get into like building the lineups momentarily. But like, yeah, let's say I cancel it right at like 441. Like, hey, that's okay. You know what I mean? If you need to cancel the build early, that is an okay thing to do. So like, don't be afraid to stop it as needed. All right, next question. For main slates, is there a way to make all my builds QB to whatever correlated player stacks? So let's just go to the main. So you can control your stacks if that's kind of the question being asked here. So like you go to rules, you go to add new rule. I would go to stacks. I recommend the advanced stacking rules. I think they're a little bit better. So like, let's say that, you want a quarterback with a pass catcher. You don't want running back. Okay. Well, then I could say, okay, wide receiver, tight end, greater than or equal to 1. I could set a range. I say I want at least 1, but no more than 3. That's another option, right? Let me move my face. So like here, right, I changed this from greater than to range. Okay, I want like 1 to 3 pass catchers with my quarterback. I can include like run back options, right? You could, not do that. You say greater than 1, right? There's like a lot of different ways you could do this. I could say running backs equal to 0. Maybe I never want to play my quarterback with my running back. The advanced stack options give you a lot of personalization here, but this is a way of controlling that. So I would experiment with this first. I think it's going to be your best tool to getting closer to what you're looking for there. All right, next question. After watching the Saber School videos, I have 2 questions about contest selection. Does percent to first factor in at all when deciding which contest to enter? I have been avoiding contests where the percent to first is too high except satellites. Is that a mistake? Second, how do overlapping slates / showdowns factor into contest selection? Example, NFL main slate and NFL afternoon slate. Should I spread my daily wager across both slates or treat them as distinct slates, even though some of the games are on both slates? Okay, good question. So I'm going to do the second one first. So with regard to overlapping slates, and I'll move my face back. With regard to overlapping slates, I would treat them as one. They're basically considered correlated slates where the outcome on one will impact the other. So if you're wrong on the small, then, that could have an impact on your other slate as well. So I would spread out the daily wager across both slates in that example. Now, as far as the second part, I do not think you need to consider percent to first. It is my understanding actually that sim ROIs tend to be higher when the percent to first is higher, and the flatter payout structures actually aren't great for post-contest sim ROI, which is like pretty interesting. But it is not something that we recommend considering unless, but it doesn't mean it's something you can't consider, right? Like if you care about it, then there's nothing to say that you shouldn't account for it or use it as some type of tiebreaker in some way, shape, or form. But as far as like our recommendations go, it's not something you need to like actively look at. All right. Next question. Can you help me understand what a good portfolio EV should be and sim ROI? Okay, so this all comes down to like contest flashback and looking at past slates. This is always going to be contest specific, and I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. So like, let's say we go back to Friday, we go back to the Showdown slate. And let's go, pick a contest. Let's say we're going to pick, I don't know, the Wildcat, for example. Okay, we come into the Wildcat. We go over to users. Now, let's say that, you entered 10 lineups in this contest. Okay, so I'm going to do greater than or equal to 10, sort by sim ROI. So like a good sim ROI in this contest would be basically anything that's positive. This just tells me that this is a very tough contest. And, it's a high dollar entry contest. There's probably a lot of sharp players in this contest. I can tell by simply just looking at the names here of the players that played it that this is a sharp contest. So like in this contest, like literally any single digit positive ROI could be good, right? Okay. Well, what if we go and like look at the flagship contest from last night, right? $20, 150 max. This might take a little bit longer to load, but the post contest sim did run for this. So we'll just give it a second here. All right. So it does load. Okay. So let's look at people who max this out. All right. Top sim ROIs in this one. This contest has a lot more edge based on the sim ROIs, right? There are sim ROIs that are over 50%, over 40, over 30, right? So you can't say in this contest that solely having a positive sim ROI is good. If you are 5%, it's great that you're positive, but I think there is, room to improve. I always kind of say, like, if you're in the top 10 to 20 maxers, like literally ranked, that's like a good place to be. If you were 35%, like, hey, that's pretty good. You don't need to be the top person. The top player is going to kind of vary a little bit here, right? But if you're, toward the top of this list, that's good. In this contest, that might be, being 30%. In another contest, it might be being 5%, right? So this all comes down to what like positive sim ROI, what's a good number, will always depend on what are the highest sim ROIs achievable for the contest that you're playing. So that's the way I would think about that when looking through this, after slates are over. All right, next question. How would I do stacking if I want Burrow with 2, but Jackson with only 1? Thank you. Okay, let's go back to the main. And we're just letting the slate load. So your best way of doing this, in my opinion, is probably going to be group manual rules. So I would go to add new rule. I would do a group manual. And then I would say if at least 1, and then let's say I put Joe Burrow here. And I just check him in with this icon on the side. I click save. Then, and I'm going to move my face. Then use at least 2. And then I would go and I would check in his position players. So I recommend staying in the all section and then filtering for Cincinnati. If you want, right? You could put on a projection filter, projection greater than, I don't know, 4, something like that. Where it's a little bit easier. Okay, and then I just go and check Chase. I can consider if I want the running back or not. Maybe I don't want the defense, and then maybe I'm interested in Gesicki or Iosivas, right? Maybe I'm not interested in them, right? Maybe I want to leave them out. This is all kind of personalization. Like maybe I was just kind of talking about Chase Brown Higgins, right? So it depends on what you want. All right, then I would say if at least 1 Burrow, then use at least 2 of these guys, right? And then I name it Cincinnati. And then I would just do the opposite for Lamar, right? I have to say if I have Lamar, then use no more than 1, and then I would check in his players on the right-hand side, right? And then I would just make sure I only have 1 of the guys on that side. So group manual rules, if-then rules, change use to if, will give you the ability to kind of write those rules differently for different players. So that's what I would be using. All right. I believe we answered every single question here. It was a fun show, over an hour. Haven't done that in a long time. Looks like a lot of people tuned in. So appreciate you all hanging out with me on a Saturday here. Good luck this weekend. I will be back Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks.